Welcome to the TFD Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Sullivan, and this is the show where we break down popular science into easily digestible and actionable information to give you the blueprint to be a high performer in your life. Today is the first of what will be many episodes where I speak with other members of the TFD team to break down events that we have attended, science that we use in our everyday practice, and the day-to-day happenings of a performance dietitian. Today's episode, I will be chopping it up with our senior performance dietitian, Jack Doherty, otherwise known as the Combat Dietitian. We're going to recap our recent trip to Houston, Texas for UFC 271 last month and give you guys some insights into what it is really like to work with top-level UFC athletes at a big pay-per-view event. I'll leave the rest of the talking for the episode, so let's get to it. All right, we are now live. Recording is in process. I am not going to blame Jack for this. That was by far the most painful start to I think I've done over 100 podcast episodes. And that's taken us over 45 minutes to get started. I'm not saying it's your fault, but it's probably your fault, I reckon.
I'm definitely going to say it's your fault. It's definitely not my fault.
I don't know what happened there, but that was painful. We got here. We're doing it. We're starting. So brand new podcast platform, TFD Performance Podcast. So we're doing this podcast platform. We're still going to be running the Fight Science podcast. We still love doing that, putting out the free information that we do over there. But what we want to do with this podcast is give you guys a lot more insight into what we do in our day-to-day, what we do as dietitians working in the performance space. I want to get you guys familiar with our team, hearing their sides of what goes on. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this episode. So today I've got our senior performance dietitian, Jack Doherty. If you guys follow TFD, you're definitely seeing Jack. He is better known as the Combat Dietitian on his socials. But we're going to be recapping an event that we went to last month. It was the first international event Jack's come to with me since COVID has started. So in probably, I think over 2 years, maybe even 3 years, we'll talk about one of those two. But we're going to be talking about UFC 271 that happened 13th of February in Houston, Texas last month. So before we get going, Jack, what's going on?
Nothing much, just working away. Very busy fight schedule we've got on. I think as a team, we've got the Big Eternal card coming up this Saturday, sorry. So we've got a lot of athletes on that, but just a busy time, which is great. It's great to see the fights back and COVID not ruining everything as it has over the last 2 years.
Yeah, March. I call it March Madness. I think it's by far the busiest time of year for us in terms with our combat athletes, at least, is because you get that massive break. Like all of the final fight cards from the previous year, they all wrap up around November, and then everyone takes December off and everyone ignores what we tell them to do during their off-camp period. And then they all come back into camp around January. So we're going through what we call March Madness at the moment. I think we'll do the numbers up, but it's something crazy between I would say over 75 athletes this month actively competing. That's just not just like normal jiu-jitsu comps. That's like scheduled fights. That's just our combat athletes. Plus we've got all the other guys doing everything. March Madness is well and truly underway.
Yeah, definitely. I think 75 is probably an understatement if that as well. But yeah.
That's very true. So let's talk about this. I want to go over in this episode. I want to talk about UFC Houston because that event, it was awesome. It was mixed results with the team. We got, in terms of success with our athletes, which I don't really put a lot of stock in, to be honest. At the end of the day, I don't really mind whether they win or lose. That's not our job. We're not their skills coach. We're not their technical coach. We're not doing that. We come in for the performance nutrition side of it. And I guess for results on the night, we went 3 from 4. We unfortunately, Bloods didn't get away with the win. But on that card, we were looking after Blood Diamond from City Kickboxing, Carlos Uberg from City Kickboxing, Israel Adesanya from City Kickboxing, and then King Casey O'Neill, who was probably been with TFD for one of our longest standing clients. So we were helping her out while we were over there as well. But 3 from 4 from that card. But I want to talk about what the week was, what it was like cutting weight with those guys, what it was like making weight, go through to give you guys an insight, what it's like for us when we're over there. Because it's not just like we go there and we've got a kitchen and we've got everything and the athletes are with us like all the time. They've got media obligations. They're everywhere. Me and Jack weren't even staying in the same place with each other, and we've got to coordinate food. And the place where I was staying was 20 minutes away from the athlete hotel. I was staying with a few of the athletes. Jack was closer to Casey at the athlete hotel. So I want to talk about and go over like the logistics of what actually makes the fight week work, because on our social media, I feel like we give the best version of it and we show everyone what the best parts of it all. And we make it, not that it's not all running smoothly, it all runs smoothly, but there is a lot of chaos. There's a lot of madness that goes on, and it's just being able to work within that storm. So I guess, Jack, let's start off with giving your thoughts. Let's start right from the start. What was it like getting to Houston when obviously it was the first time you traveled for a while? We've been locked down in Melbourne, had a really rough lockdown, but Australia as a whole been really locked down. What was it like just traveling, getting to the States? It was your first time in the States as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was my first trip. I think it was just a lot more stressful. I think it's just like you have to provide so much documentation from, your vaccination to getting the PCR test before you leave. Became even more stressful because our man, our videographer Grizzly Wayne, got his PCR test 48 hours beforehand, and he needed 24 hours to enter the US. So we got there quite early, so we had to run off to the testing clinic in Sydney, get it done, come back. Luckily, it came in quite quickly. But I think overall that part, the standard airport waiting kind of stuff. And then you get on the airplane, which I actually found was probably better because there was not many people on the plane. So we got to basically sleep the whole way, feeling fresh, got there. Obviously, the transit time, I think it was 32 hours between flying and transit. But yeah, overall, it was just a way more stressful experience. The masks, people a bit on more on edge in the airport. But overall, once we got to Houston, it was smooth sailing.
Yeah, the PCR thing before the flight is always changing. Like that 24-hour is only recently. So that one in February is the only time I've had to do the 24-hour. I think I was over there, it was 6 weeks before in December, and it wasn't the 24 hours, 48 hour. Plus on top of that, I used to get all of mine done through Sullivan Nicolaides, which is a pathology clinic here in Australia. And you just go there, get your tests, and they do rapid, and then they stop doing it. So the only way you can get it is to physically go to the international airport, but you have to go there a day before you leave. And for me, it's not too bad. I live in the city, I'm not too far from Brisbane airport, but I always think imagine if you were, I don't know, if you're out west or something and you've got an international flight, you don't have a center where you can get a rapid PCR, but you got to get that test before. I think they're doing now, you can rock up to the airport 6 hours before and get a super rapid test. It's just, I don't know. It adds so much stress.
And it was stressful leading up to it because especially in Melbourne, after New Year's, that's when the big increase of COVID happened. So a lot of people around me started popping for COVID. So I'm trying to avoid social situations just so, we planned this stuff. It took us, a month to get the accommodation right, to, do our scheduling and stuff like that. And then to worry for weeks on end about, will I get COVID just before this, or will I pop hot and not be able to go? So that was just an added stress, which for the weeks leading up to it was always on my mind.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to talk about is everything that goes into it. Because I'm doing it right now. I've got to leave on Sunday. I'm heading to Columbus, Ohio for Kai, and then I'm going to stay over there and head to Jacksonville in Florida for Alex Volkanovski. And the amount of work you have to do beforehand to organize these fight weeks, it's crazy. And it all changes every single fight week. So for that fight week in Houston, the way it worked is Eugene had booked this big Airbnb where all of the city kickboxing guys were going to be staying. So I think it was a room. I don't know how many rooms are in that house, 10 rooms or something.
Yeah, it was enormous.
It was a massive house. But it had 4 kitchens. So it was an ideal for me. And I had the athletes close to us. We had a designated eating area, their sleeping areas. It was really nice. And we had big fridges where I could store everything. I had pots, pans. So all I had to do to get over there was just bring all my spices. So we have to have a very strict set of spices. And when I say strict, it means we can't have sodium in those spices. And so you're cooking with all low to no sodium spices. And that's how you take a whole bag of, I think I've got 30 spices in my spice bag. And that's how you get your different flavor profiles. But you have to bring over so many other things. I always bring over the high grade olive oil from Australia because I'm a bit iffy on the olive oil in America. And then I bring over a lot of my own cooking things because I don't know if that's just superstition or it's a comfort thing to have certain types of spatulas and knives and everything. So you have to travel with all of that. I think when I pack my bag, I'd say 85% of it is just things that I'm going to take out immediately and put on a counter, whether it's a scale, whether it's the train aid that we take. We have to take 6 things of the containers of train aid for post-work. You have to take water bottles. You have to take the bathroom scale with you. You have to take kitchen scales. You have to take cutting boards. You have to take knives. You have to take all of this stuff. 85% of my luggage is stuff that I take out straight away and I just put on a bench. And then I'd say maybe 10% of that is like training gear. So I can train myself, like go running and go to the gym and whatnot. And then maybe like, what is that? Like 5% is like stuff that you'd wear out. Not that you go out much, but you might have like one pair of jeans and maybe one white t-shirt that you take. And like, that's all you can take. All of your stuff you take out as soon as you get there. And it's always horrible packing for these trips. How do you find it?
Yeah, I think like, because we spend so much time, like the logistics of it, like making sure we got an Airbnb that was close to the hotel, making sure that the Airbnb had kitchen, had the bathroom. The bath was, I even requested like an extra picture of the bath just to make sure that in case we needed it, in case the hotels, which didn't end up having, the athlete hotel didn't have the baths, making sure all those things were in place. That was one side of it. And then, just packing for it to see like how much, what we need and making sure that everything's there because like, what the fight week's like. Once we're there, we're on call 24/7. So it's not like we have time to really just jet off quickly to get some things. Like if the athletes want us there or they need us in a certain location at a certain time, we have to be there. So it was definitely stressful making sure that we had everything on board before we even got there. Yeah,
that's another important thing is because at the house that I was in, we did have bathrooms, but they were so tiny. Like we got Israel Adesanya, who's like, what is he, like 6'3" or something? Actually, I don't know. Israel's not going to listen to this, but sorry if I got your height wrong. He's tall. He's tall as shite. Same with Carlos. He's massive. Bloods is like still not a small human. So we couldn't use our bathrooms. And literally the Airbnb that we got, it was in downtown Houston. That was where Jack and Grizzly Wayne, our videographer, stayed. We had to make sure that they had a big bath because we've had this problem so many times before at local shows, international shows, where there's just not a bathroom. And we've spoken about this at length on the podcast. And me and you, Jack, always talk about this. I just do not I do not prefer the guys to be in the sauna. Portable saunas, you can get away with, but bath is by far, I think, is a superior way to cut weight. So we need to make sure we have that. Even finding an Airbnb where that was the case adds an additional layer of stress. And the thing is we ended up using it. We ended up going there and using that because we thought maybe we could get a suite at the athlete hotel. And then the UFC said, no, none of the rooms have like a bathtub in there. So it's like, I kind of feel for the guys, for the guys that maybe didn't plan ahead or maybe they don't have their own nutritionists or dietitians or people looking after their weight cut. Maybe they'll get to fight week and they just go, oh crap, like, I don't know what my options are here.
Also, so the number one question I got back when I got back from America was like, how was it? It looks amazing. It looks like, it was so flashy, all this kind of things. Like, I think the videos kind of glorify all that kind of stuff, but don't see the other side of things. Like even for the setup for the acute weight cut, me and Grizz the night before were setting everything up. We got all the towels from the hotel room, making sure I even did like a dry run in the bath like a few times just to make sure that, I'm 6'2", just to make sure that obviously Israel's so big that he's going to fit in it. It's going to cover enough of his body. So it was definitely a process, but and it still shocks me that even at the UFC level, they still haven't got bars in the hotel room because as you said, like I've done multiple cuts when people prefer sauna. And I just think that, it's just so much more of a stressful experience. And the bath is just exactly what we say, like it's the way to go, the least stress and the least path of resistance really.
I just Googled how tall Israel is and he's 1.93 meters. So what's that? Is that like?
I'm like 186.
Is that like 6'3"? I don't know. He's huge. I've worked with him for years. I feel like I should know that straight off the bat.
That was surprising too. When I actually saw him in real life, I'm like, he's not just tall. He's actually quite he's obviously got skinny limbs, but he's actually a very big man.
It's the funny thing, man, about Israel is like I've known him for years, right? So it's just like, maybe I'm just oblivious to it, but I remember when he started in the UFC or when he was going up his ranks and when he was just getting guys, knocking, he's climbing up the rank, everyone had that like narrative of, oh, he's just the skinny guy. And like when he did get into the UFC, he was skinnier. And I know like Eugene and his strength conditioning coach Sons have put a lot of effort into beefing up. But like I always say, if you think that, you obviously haven't met the guy because he's massive. Like everything about him is massive. Like he's tall. He's got like a thick muscular core and he's like limbs. He's not like got those like skinny little pin limbs that you see on like a lot of runners or like that.
when he walked into the Airbnb that time and they took his shirt off, I was just like, what? Like, he's so much bigger in real life than we see on camera. Like, on camera, he kind of looks small. Then you're like, yeah, he's a big human.
Yeah. And exactly. Like we're saying, finding ways for Israel to cut weight, and he prefers to do it in a bathtub. So we had to find the bathtub. So I guess that's the first challenge and the first like lot of stress that we had from that week was doing that. We got that. We found the Airbnb. And then once we got there, I think I got in there like a day or two earlier. The other thing is that we've got to do like groceries. Like, we buy all the groceries and then we cook everything. Like, I like to cook it fresh for the guys there. That's something you also have to plan for. And like ahead of time, you have to find groceries around. Cause I've been in some cities. Like, I remember when we went to China and Shenzhen, like back in 2018 or 19 or something like that. And there was no Western supermarkets anywhere. I had to like find ahead of time. And there was like all this issues when we were in China, like getting steroids in the meats and stuff. So I had to find a Western one. I think I ended up getting a train for like an hour and 20 minutes to go find this place that I could get like reliable chicken thigh and other things. And like same thing, Houston, Texas it's obviously there's HEBs and there's lots of other good grocery markets, but you have to plan all that. Like, you have to, because you don't have a lot of time when you get there. It's not like when we get there, we're just like, oh, okay, like breakfast is at 8 and then lunch is at 12 and things at 4. So you just kind of lounge around. Once you get there and you land, it's go, go, go. Because the guys are usually there. They usually started their weight cut. They're hungry and you've got to get this ball going. So it's, okay, once you land, we've got to go find the grocery store. We know where it is ahead of time. Go get all the groceries, go to unpack. I like to prep a lot of things ahead. So just things that we'll be using a lot of, like, say, spice mixes, getting all the different spice mixes. So you have like 12 different containers of spice mix. If you have different sauce combinations that you're making, like making up the sauces from hand. If you prep, like you can prep all your meat, like cut it up and then make sure it's there so you don't have to spend time cutting it. So you're chucking it in there. And then obviously you have a plan with everything that you want to feed the guys, but it's all in flux. Like, I could rock up there and then say Israel, Carlos or Bloods or Casey or someone messages me and they go, hey, I'm actually heavier than what, or lighter. And you've got to adjust your plan to be able to feed them. So as soon as you land, it's kind of like go, go, go. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. And again, like, we do glorify it. That's social media, cat's out of the bag. Like, we do glorify it. So social media. What was your thoughts? And we've done a couple fight weeks, I guess in general, what are your thoughts of the pace and the actual workload when it comes to these fight weeks? Because like I said, I feel like a lot of people think, oh yeah, maybe you're just like sleeping in, waking up, cooking them breakfast, lounging around, hanging out in the sun and then making them lunch. But what were your thoughts of what the workload is actually like?
Yeah, I think like personally, when I work with guys, like we provide like a fight week plan, like, and protocols and so forth. But like, we check in every day to see how we're tracking, right? So it's always adjusting if we need to adjust. So when we got there, it was like exemplified to the max. Like, you know, Casey wakes up at one time, Blood's another, Israel another. So what you have to do is, it's not like you just get up, you cook a group meal, you serve it and we're gone. It's just like, you have to be like, we're up at like 5 every morning waiting for those texts. You were at the house, so you'd be like, I was waiting for your text, or call back Jack, go do this, go drop this off to Casey. Can you make her these meals? So the workload is like, it was heavy just because of the timings, just because you have to be available at any one point. Like, there was a point, probably the day before weigh-ins for Casey, it was like 11:30 at night, and you called me and it's like, oh, you have to go drop off some food to Casey. So like, that's the thing. Like, we're probably sleeping 4 or 5 hours max a night, if that, if you don't include the stress that we go through, it stops us from sleeping. But yeah, just like being on call all the time. It's, you know, it may not seem like on the cameras what you see is like, it's not a stressful experience. It's just a bit of cooking, a bit of delivering, but it's just about being like on top of everything for the athletes, being available for yourself in my case, and also available for the athletes whenever they need. Because Casey would message me, oh, I'm hungry or something like that. So we'd have to like make sure that it was timely. It was, you know, it was tasty as well. That's a big thing. So yeah, I think the workload is something that not many people see behind the scenes. And it's something that obviously, if you see our faces after that week, we look like we've aged about 10 years. So yeah, it's a heavy load.
That's a good point, and I think that's the thing. And I had Dr. Ian Dunnican on yesterday talking about the importance of sleep. And Ian has helped us a lot with this and given me a lot of guidance, because the thing is, during this fight week, you obviously we're traveling overseas. So we've got the challenge of jet lag, and the guys have sleep strategies, and you want to get them back into their routine as fast as possible. You want to allow their body to get back into their natural cycle as fast as possible. And obviously we spend a bit of time, get there early. That's why we do that. But to give people an idea of what breakfast time is like, for example, so Carlos woke up at 5, he'd meditate, and then he'd eat about 5:30 to 6. Bloods would always be up at 7:30, and then would eat around that time. Casey, who was at the hotel closer to where you were, was up and would up about 8:30, would eat about 9 a.m. And then Israel, he's definitely like a night owl. His sleeping pattern is he's up late and he sleeps in. So he doesn't get up until 10:30, 10, maybe anywhere between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. That's always been his natural cycle. So obviously he's eating breakfast later. So just from that, you've got to be ready to go for breakfast, like up ready to go from anywhere between 5 and 11 a.m. And that's just the breakfast. And then by the time you give up Israel's breakfast, it's 11. Carlos has already had a snack 2 hours before it, like 8, 9 a.m. And then he's getting ready to get lunch. So he's getting ready to get lunch. And so you're starting to get ready that lunch. And then Bloods is an hour or two later, he's got to eat lunch. So it's not like we're sitting down just doing these group meals, is because you've got to get them eating at very particular times. And you want to do the same thing that we do during camp, like pace that protein throughout the day to help their satiation. So it's constantly like we talk about the workload. You get up early and then you just keep going. And then by the time you roll around to dinner, and by the time, say, Carlos might eat his dinner, if they're all training, he might eat before training, and then they go train at 8 p.m. We got to go to the gym, watch him train, and then Israel's going to come home, but he still needs to eat dinner after that. So you got to give him dinner at like sometimes 11 p.m. And so you're not back into bed, you're not in bed by midnight, 12:30, 1 a.m., and then you're up. And like, this is the other part is like you and I, like we're still training. Like I have a big, like, I do not like not training on these fight weeks. Like I think mentally, physically, you should do it. The thing is just like to fit that in. Yeah. You're probably getting up at 3:30, 4 a.m. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. Like you'll have sleep experts here listening to this. And I just spoke to Ian yesterday. It's absolutely not ideal. But at the end of the day, like that's our job. That's what we have to do. If we were doing this every week, we would definitely have to come up with strategies where we would take a team of us and we'd have to just split this up, and we couldn't be doing it every single day. But I guess you just have to not suck it up. I'm not going to suck it up. It's the wrong term, but you just have to accept that you're going to go into that sleep debt for those few days. And then you've got to be very mindful of it the weeks after. Okay, I've got to catch up on the sleep and get better at it.
Yeah, 100%. I think, me and Grizz would go train, but we'd have a phone on us all the time. And then like we'd have to run off quickly. And as you said, like you were prepared, with the plan, we were prepared at the start of the week. But then like, for instance, on the Thursday, Casey wakes up a bit closer to weight and we had to go, okay, well then we need to give her extra food. And in that case, it was pancakes. So we had to like drive to Whole Foods, get some good pancake mix, come back, make it. And that was completely not the plans because she progressed so well throughout the fight week. So it was just the thing of just being constantly on the move, and because we didn't have a car, so we'd have to like Uber everywhere, make sure that was all on time. And just, I think lack of sleep, making sure we're keeping everyone happy. But yeah, again, that's just our job. And I think that's what's not seen from behind the scenes. It's like we do work a lot more than just the weight cuts or the cooking on those weeks for sure.
Yeah. And the sleep deprivation is a real thing, like, because you can feel it. Like, I think it's a balancing act, like a fine balancing act. And I think there is some systems, obviously, when you're sleep deprived and you're dealing with these stress, it's like that fight or flight response where you probably do get the, adrenaline dump through your body, and it kind of makes you hyper vigilant, hyper aware, and you can ride that wave for a little bit, but it does take its toll. Like you can only do that in the very short term. And by the end of the week, this is the craziest thing about these weight cuts. And you know what? It's probably an issue that if these weeks continue to be as frequent as they are, that like as a team, we'll definitely need to address and maybe like rotate people between these weeks. But that decision-making is hugely important as you get to the back end of the week, like your decision-making, what you do with these guys, because that's the whole reason of having us there in person. Is like we can give guys plans, but the plans are just words on a piece of paper. It's what you do with them. It's a dynamic moving system. Like your nutrition plan should work with your physiology, and your physiology is dynamic and always moving. So we need to be like that when we're at these fight weeks, like you said. So if Casey wakes up a bit lighter, and we need to be able to say, okay, this is the most appropriate increase of calories and carbs and whatever to get you. You'll still make weight, but I need you to have this. You've got to be dynamic with that, but you need to be cognitive enough to make those decisions. And that's probably one of the hardest parts about these fight weeks, is because you're one, the stress is constantly there. I wouldn't even say it's low grade stress. It's pretty high, because at the end of the day, these guys need to make weight. Like, there's financial penalties if they don't make weight. I'm never worried about them missing weight, but I am always thinking about, am I sending these guys in the best state possible? Are we sending them in as fueled as possible? Because we're part of a team. Like, we're part of City Kickboxing. Like, we've worked with Case. At the end of the day, this is a competition. We're part of a team. We want our team to win. We want these guys to do well. Making weight is cool. And yeah, it's good that we can help them and assist them and do that safely. At the end of the day, I want these guys to win. Like, you want to give them a competitive advantage. So you want to constantly be thinking, like, how can I do that throughout the week? Can I give them extra carbs? Can I somehow give them extra calories that'll make this weight cut a bit mentally easier, physically easier? The drawback and the catch-22 to that is the mental capacity required goes up as the week goes on, but an accumulation of the stress and sleep deprivation means that your physical cognitive ability is going down. So by the time we get to the actual weight cuts, it's pretty stressful. I wouldn't say stressful. We keep saying stressful, but it's draining. It's like how you feel when you've done a tough workout, like that, really fatigued, but you're mentally fatigued, you're physically fatigued by the time you get there. But that's when it matters. And, and that's where you really have to dig deep. And, I've personally used strategies where you really got to dial in your own nutrition, and you've really got to make it. I don't really supplement a lot, but I'll supplement that fight week to make sure by the time that we get there, I'm doing everything I can that, okay, I accept that just by the nature of fight week, I'm going to be pretty stuffed by the time we get to this weight cut, but we need to be so switched on. We need to be so switched on by the time it gets there. I need to do all of these things to make sure that's the case.
And I think there's another part we missed, I think, which is probably one of the main parts of fight week as well, is like supporting the athlete. I think that, they've got their coaches there, they've got maybe their friends or training partners, but in this realm of making weight and the fight week, we are a huge support system. So, giving your athletes the feedback, making sure that they feel comfortable, that their stress levels are lower. And obviously we crunch the numbers and we know what we're doing. We've done this so many times that we know it's going to be a process that we're going to make weight, but it's also about a heavy reliance on supporting that athlete. Like, I remember talking to Casey in the hotel rooms, and being at the CKB house, you kind of talking through the process of the next couple of days with the boys. I think that's something that a lot of people miss as well, which is that we are a huge support system for a lot of our athletes in fight camp and outside of fight camp as well. And that's, again, you have to be on, you have to be able to be cognizant of what you're saying and the support you're giving them. So, but like we've spoken about before, like after the weigh-ins are done, everyone goes off and eat. And then I messaged you after I did a eternal card, it was like a back-to-back one. And I was like 3 days later, I'm like, man, I still feel exhausted. And you're like, yeah, man. I'm like, it's just like an adrenaline dump. You're exhausted. You've had days and days of stress. So I'm just like, it does take a toll. It does take a toll, but
That's one of the biggest things, I think, as a job. What we do is that alleviation of stress. And I know we're saying stress is a buzzword in this, but it's plays such a huge role. Like obviously we're going through it, and it's probably not the best thing for our bodies. But if you think of these athletes making weight, and I'm going to do a whole episode about why stress is so detrimental when you're trying to make weight. But one of the biggest reasons is just simple physiology, the role that cortisol has on aldosterone and the way that it makes the body retain fluid. And what are we doing all of fight week is we're trying to move fluid from different compartments in the body. So if we've got this effect where these athletes are high stress modes and they're retaining more fluid, you're going to complicate that process. So that's a huge, huge thing that we do, is that you take that entire weight off their shoulder. Like you literally put a plate of food in front of them, and they trust that you've done all the numbers right, that you've done all the calculations, and that they eat this and they're going to wake up the next morning, they're going to see the number on the scale that they need to see. that's a huge, huge, huge part of our job, is just reassuring these guys as, yes, we're good. You can eat that. Yes, drink this much fluid. Yes, this is like the right amount of salt to have. This is the right amount of water drink, right amount of food. You need to eat this before you go to bed. No, it's not going to impact the process. I've got it. It's all good. It's okay. Let's just keep going. And that's huge. And you see that mountain of stress take off. I think a really good example, even from that week with Israel, is that because Israel got in the day that he got in, we had to start the entire process a day later. And when we started the process a day later, I knew, because I've worked with Israel and you're the same, we collect so much data on these guys. Like, I've just got banks and banks of information on these guys of what you've done in previous fight weeks. So more information, the better. The more data points you have on these guys, the better. You can better inform your next fight week that you do with them. I knew from looking over all of his numbers on the way over that if we started the day he wanted to start, which we had to because of the logistics, I knew we would always be behind the 8 ball in terms of his weight. We were essentially a day late for everything. And I know we've done that once before. So I knew that there's a workaround that we could adjust the numbers on one particular day. On the Thursday of the fight week, we just had to change the meal timing and then change what we did with the workout when we started the rapid weight loss phase and the final sweat phase. I know because we've done that before, but I knew mentally there was going to be some drag because Israel on the scale would be seeing this number. And I knew that was a conversation I had to keep having with him each week. Hey, trust the numbers, trust the numbers, trust me that I know the numbers and that each day we're hitting the right number, even though this is probably a day behind what we're used to. Trust me, we've got it worked out. We've done it before. And he even said, like, I remember the night when it came to Thursday and he woke up a bit heavier on that Thursday, that night when we were leaving the gym and his weight went to exactly where we needed to be and he hit within 100 grams of that number in the car. He was even saying, like, man, thanks so much. Like, that put my mind at ease. You telling me that, and like, I've just got to trust the numbers. Like, I trust you that you know the numbers, and you just got to trust the process and trust that we know what we're doing. And relieving that stress is such a huge part of this process.
And I think another unique part of this whole process is that the acute weight cut, because we work with so many guys and everyone has so much different personalities, that it's very important to like really understand what, that person and like what makes them at ease and what makes them like their stress levels decrease. Because, you might have 2-3 weight cuts in a day and everything like something different. Like, I have guys who like to play loud music. I've got guys who don't like to play, they like to be in silence. Some guys like to have a conversation with you. So it depends. You've got to be really aware of what they're kind of wanting in this support system. I think that's what's really good about the fact that we work with these guys for such a long period of time, because you become almost, if not friends with these guys who have that trust for you and understanding what they need and understanding that acute weight phase, because it's not easy for anyone. Like, even if it's a small amount, it's still a discomfort. And to understand someone's and their needs and how to make that process as easy as possible just makes the whole process so much easier.
Yeah. The final rapid weight loss is an interesting process, and I think it's one that's not spoken about enough. And I understand. I have this conversation all the time with like other researchers around the world and other colleagues that we work with. It's something that I feel like needs to be spoken about more, because if you do everything right, like in the acute weight loss with the fight week and everything, and then with the fight camp, you do all that nutrition, that rapid weight loss phase or the weight cut, as the guys call it, doesn't have to be so dangerous. And once you've got all of these other things lined up, you can actually move quite a lot of weight. Like, you can very easily move between 6 and, that entire week very comfortably up to 10%. But in that final phase, you can even, 5%, but even 6% if you've done it right and you know what you're doing. And then the next layer on top of all of that, which you can't get to unless you understand how to do all of the other things right. The other layer on top of it is like what you're saying, is the personalization. What music does this guy like listening to? When is it time to talk? And when is it time to just sit there and shut up? When is it time that I know that they're struggling? I need to talk them through their coping mechanism, whether that coping mechanism is breathing, whether that coping mechanism is me just telling them their favorite quote, motivational quote, whether that's me talking about their family, their kids, whatever it is. You need to know that athlete. And that's where it, like, again, the stress of it all, when you know how to level down that stress, because it's a pretty stressful thing you're putting the body through. And we always say it, you want to get the body through it through the path of least resistance, because there's a million different ways you can do it and you can make that weight. but we want to get it in the most easy, simple, least stressful, least harmful way on their body. And adding that extra layer to it, it does. It makes, like you saw with Bloods, like Bloods has been notorious for doing pretty bad weight cuts. And before I started working with him, even the first time I worked with him a few years ago, it was one of the worst weight cuts I've ever been a part of. And he's gotten so much better. But a lot of that to do is not necessarily just the numbers. Like he can hit the numbers. It's all the mental side of it. It's getting the mental side of it and putting his mind at ease and him giving up that trust to us and being like, okay, this is right. I feel like once we broke that barrier with Bloods, that's when, and you saw it in person, like when we made that weight, just how happy he was, how surprised he was, because it was the best one yet. But we knew, well, like from what I've done with him in the past, what to say, when, and how to get him going and how to push him a little bit. And he was fine. Like I've seen that guy after weight cuts like years ago, before we started working. The first time I ever saw him, it was terrifying. I was like, this should not be happening. So to see him go from that to that is just massive. But yes, he got the numbers right and he followed the diet perfectly through fight camp, did the fight week. And then I think it's all those other things though. And the stress alleviation is a huge, huge part of it, of how these guys feel once they finally make the weight.
Yeah, one of my guys in Melbourne just calls it like when I rock up to say with the gym or the house we're cutting weight, he's just like, take over. He's like, I don't want to think. I know you know what you're doing. Just take over. And that's what the whole thing is. I'm taking a whole load of him worrying about how many he's losing per round, all those kind of things. I'm just taking over that. And because I know him so well, I know a lot of my guys so well, I can just do the right things. I play a bit of music, have slight conversation, make sure no one's in the room that annoys them, and doing all those kind of things. So the personalization, I think, is one of the most important things on top of everything else we do as the pillars of our work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think taking away that stress is just so important. It's something that is not spoken about enough. It's not spoken about enough. And I think that's something if people who want to get into this field, if you want to get into it, it's something that I can't encourage you enough, is getting to know your athlete. And obviously you're going to have a good relationship with your athlete just doing what we do. You're going to be talking to them every day. You have to speak to them every day. You have to be willing to adjust things on the fly, but really getting to know your athlete and getting to understand what makes them tick and what doesn't, and what you have to say to keep them going. Because at the end of the day, it does. It makes a huge difference. And cutting weight can be very dangerous, but once you know what you're doing, you kind of take away that risk. Then you can start, okay, the actual cut itself, like I don't care what anyone says, like no matter how good we are, anyone who's done it will understand, like once you're sweating and you're cutting like that weight, it's not fun. Like it's not fun. Like it's like sitting in a tub and sweating out and then being in the wraps and whatever. But there's so many things, like that's when the mental side of it comes in, and knowing your athlete on that level and being like, okay, having, breathing techniques. Like we quite literally at City Kickboxing, like work with Dave Wood from, Woody's integrated training systems. Like we have breathing mechanics and breathing systems that we use purely during the weight cut. Like Dave Neath, who's the mental coach and sports mental performance coach for a lot of the City Kickboxing guys, I talk to him time and time again. What type of things are making them click? Like obviously you don't get too deep into what they're doing, but me and Neathy, like we have a strategy that we use that I know will make these guys tick. And like for Israel, for example, we talk about becoming style bender. Like that's a process that we talk about. Like, and I know that like through his mental work and that he's done, is that there's a process through fight week that we talk about, like, and he goes through it. You can see it. Like he goes through where he transforms from Israel and he becomes style bender. And that's what we center our talk about around that weight cut, is like becoming style bender. Whereas that'll look drastically different, say, if I'm working with Kai. Like next week and I'm working with Kai, there's a completely different conversation you have when you're in that room with them. And that looks completely different to say if we're working with Brad. So you need to understand what makes these guys tick. And that's what's going to get the best result for them. Yeah, so let's go and let's talk about the actual UFC fight week. And I think we won't keep blabbing on too much because I think we're covering a lot of what we wanted to cover. But in terms of, this is always interesting what I find, like your perception of what a UFC fight week was, like just the behind the scenes, right? Like I think people watch it on TV and they're like, oh yeah, it's like the guys just going in the octagon. But like I've always thought the operation that goes behind a UFC fight week with all the blue shirts and everything that goes on is insane. Like it's insanity how much work those guys do to get these. What were your thoughts when you saw it? Like obviously for hand in hand, big event, big main card event, UFC 271. What was your thoughts of like the back end behind the scenes?
There's just so many moving parts. Like when we go to the hotel and like go to the athlete, the admin kind of section, you'd call it. It was just so many moving parts, and they're there all day. I'm talking like not 9 to 5. They're there from like 6, 5 in the morning. And then like, I remember I had to get something late at night and they were still there at like midnight. I'm like, I was kind of surprised at the sheer, I know it's a big organization, but like how the complexity of the behind the scenes that all these guys go through and how many different guys, like, I had to get a sauna suit for one of the guys and you have to talk to this guy, then you have to talk to this guy, you have to sign all these documents. So it's like this whole process that obviously it's a big organization to kind of expect it. That was kind of the biggest eye opener for me, like how many moving parts they've got during that week and plus having to manage like all the athletes at the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot. Hey, I guess this is one thing why I think of it. What I wanted to get you before we wrap this up is what were your thoughts when we actually got, so say everything was done, said and done, and we got to the weigh-ins and we walked in the back room where the athletes sit before they go on the official scale. So when you rock up, you obviously check your weight out the back. They go, okay, you're on weight, don't eat or drink anything, go in the waiting room. And then that's where all the media are. We're at the back of that. The media are sitting in one room and then we're behind that wall. And then they call the athlete up and you go up with them and they weigh in and blah, blah, blah. What were your thoughts going into that room and looking around and looking at all the other athletes that were in there?
Because you came a bit later. I went with Bloods and Carlos, and obviously they were both in great nick. They looked well. We did the little pre-weight check on point. Everyone's happy. Walk out the back. We're all sitting there having a chat, and then people started to stream in because we were probably the first in there, to be honest. And then people started to stream in. I saw one athlete, a female athlete, come in and she was like basically shaking. Like she sat behind us. I could see her, like her hands jittering.
She's retired now. We can say who it is. It was
okay. It was Modafferi. Yeah, she did not look good. Like obviously I know I've seen a lot of weight cuts, so I know what a big weight cut looks like, but also the shaking and like the way she looked at that point in time was a bit concerning. And I heard little whispers that she had a rough weight cut. And then just seeing the other guys were coming in for maybe some of the heavier guys as well. It was just like they took their shirts off to get changed for the weigh-ins and so forth. And it was just like complete, like a severe dehydration look that I've seen at some people doing big weight cuts. And I was shocked. I'm like, at this level, this amount of information, the amount of support they get from the UFC as well, like it's still happening. These like drastic weight cuts are still happening. That was surprising because our guys obviously did cut weight and no one looks fantastic cutting weight, but by far looked a lot healthier, a lot more lively, talking to people where the other guys were literally sitting there with like their hoods on, looking like they were in actual pain. So that was like the most kind of like eye-opening thing. I know on the biggest stage, people think that cutting heaps of weight is an advantage, but just seeing how unwell that some of these guys looked, I won't name names, but seeing how unwell they looked was kind of a big shock to me because I thought that, at the local level, a lot of people can't afford to use like, nutritionists or people to help them. But I think with the level of support they get from like the UFC and, they can get sponsorships and so forth, I thought there'll be it'd be a lot different to like the local scene. But to my surprise, it was a lot of guys who looked like they were in a lot of pain.
Yeah, and we won't go on this too much because we're going to do a whole podcast episode about this and what really drives change in this. But I always find that it's interesting because I find in our little part of the world, I think, and I'm not tooting TFD's horn too much, but I think we've made a fairly decent impact within Australia and New Zealand. And that's not necessarily because of TFD, because of me, you, Ryan, or Loz, or anyone else on the TFD team. It's because of the athletes we have. It's because of guys like Israel Adesanya, Alexander Volkanovski, Kai Kara-France, Brad Quake-Waddell, Dan Hooker. It's all these guys that we have that younger people will look up to. And like you said, we know these guys. We've worked with them for years and years and years. They've seen the benefits of not cutting a lot of weight and doing it better. So it's just natural that they talk about it and that we talk about it, and then the younger people see it. And so our local shows, like it's pretty rare, like one off every now and then there are pockets of pretty crappy actions that are still going on in the Australian New Zealand team. But for the most part, I feel like there's been a really positive change in the culture of and the perceptions of cutting weight purely because of those top level guys speaking out about it. And I always find it so interesting when we go to America, where the culture is so different, where they have that heavy wrestling culture. And a lot of the guys in MMA are in wrestling and they've grown up doing these crappy weight cuts. And like you said, a lot of them don't have their own nutritionist, or the nutritionist might not be as well educated. And you see it, like you see it in action, what that effect has. And you see these guys rocking up thinking that it's like a cool thing to do, or like, oh, yo, just cut all this weight. And they look like a bag of dicks, for lack of a better term. They look terrible. Like they look absolutely terrible. And it blows my mind considering that every UFC athlete has access to, say, the UFC Performance Institute, and guys like Charles Stuhl, who continues to teach me things to this day. He's probably one of the best practitioners on planet Earth when it comes to combat sports nutrition, and UFC athletes have access to him for free and they won't use him. And it blows my mind.
Look at the elation. Like, obviously Blood's done bad weight cuts. This one was smooth sailing. The elation on his face when he made weight and gave you that hug, just the difference of how he felt. Like, yeah, he's been in this combat sport world for a long time. And just to see that in his face, and like, obviously I kept asking the back of, how you feeling? You all good? He's like, yeah, I feel really good. Like I feel fine. I just want to get rehydrated, of course. But just that difference in the way they felt. Like Carlos was laughing, we were joking around. And then as soon as they were rehydrated, like after the first few drinks and had a bit of food, they were like, looked like they were back to normal. Like it was great to see where some other people just looked a bit rough. I think that was the most surprising thing for me in that last couple of days, was just seeing that these high level athletes still struggle or still doing extreme things that, you know, we probably wouldn't recommend.
Yeah. Okay. I think we need to wrap this up. I'm going to wrap this up with one last question and we'll make it quick. What do you think we could do better, or what do you think you'd learned that you would do better for the next fight week that we do, which probably could be closer to home? I don't know if we were meant to say that, but could be closer to home sooner than what we think. What do you think we could do better?
I just think that the refine the logistics of everything. I know it's not always up to us, but having that logistics, being able to deliver that food, and having those kind of, not that we weren't organized, but just to have that kind of like solid place that we're staying at, a kind of home base, a bit more support just in terms of dropping stuff off. When me and you are under such high demand, sometimes it's hard to do those things, everything at once. So I just think it's just logistics, a bit more support. And I think once we're in Australia and Melbourne, Australia or Perth, I think Perth maybe the next one, that we'll have that support. And I think that's just going to make it even better.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think you got to always be reflecting and going back. Even if we had, like, I feel like that was the best fight week I've been a part of. Like, that was so good. Like, everything a part of it was really, really good. Like, I was super happy with how everyone went, but you can always do better. You can always do better. I think that's just like the nature of sports and the nature of elite level sport. Once you get comfortable, the person behind is going to run past you.
I think that's why myself and yourself, we're always, people see the successes of what we've done so far, but I think that what they don't see behind the scenes is us always trying to level up. Like we've got the science and the protocols down pat, but can we make it better? Can we make it easier? Can we actually level up as ourselves as practitioners? Yeah,
absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Well, let's call that there. That's cool. I like that recap. We're going to do these more often. I'm going to do it again once I get back from Columbus, and then once I get back from Jacksonville. I might even get Jack to come back on. We'll do another recap, but let me know what you guys think. If you guys like this type of content, let us know, comment, shoot us a message. If you want to hear more about this fight weeks, the ins and outs of fight weeks, and really getting into the dirty depths of everything that we do. If there's anything in particular you guys want to hear or any questions that you have, feel free to shoot us an answer. But other than that, that's the UFC Houston UFC 271 recap episode. All right, Jack, we've got plenty of work to do. We should get back to work now.
Thanks, guys.
And there it is, another episode of the TFD Performance Podcast. That's our recap on UFC 271. If you guys like this episode, then be sure to let us know by giving us a 5-star review. And if there are any other topics you want to hear Team TFD talk about, then do not hesitate to slide into the DMs and let us know. This podcast will be available through the podcast app, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and if you follow along our socials at @the_fight dietitian, you can see all of the best bits from our podcast episodes. Thanks for listening in, and I'll see you guys for the next episode of the TFD Performance Podcast.